Hey everyone, we're here with episode number 6 of Dinosaur Radio, Brooks Kubik and John Wood. And we've missed, not really missed any episodes, but we had hoped to get them out a little bit faster. So we got off schedule with a lot of things that came up both with John and with me. We were having trouble coordinating our calendars and schedules. But we're back and we're glad to be back, and we're going to be doing some catching up and going forward, and hope you enjoyed this episode and future episodes. So one thing that really made us want to do this episode is that John came up with a really cool video that has, I think, and John, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's been the most popular YouTube video that you've put up, at least in the first 48 hours, 72 hours or so. But it's gotten a huge response, which is absolutely fascinating to me because it's based on you doing something that is very, very hard, but very, very simple. Mm-hmm. So do you want to tell the folks about that?
Sure. If you haven't seen it yet, you'll find a link either in the summary or in the video itself, but it's the John Wood workout number 2 grip challenge. And basically it was just me demonstrating something that I've been working on for a couple months, and it was to hold a fingertip push-up position in the top position. You could call it a plank. And I just held it for 2 minutes. And it's just been, it's something that I work on that I've been working on that fills a couple things that I've always wanted to accomplish, and dovetails into some other forms of training, perhaps the bone strength project, which we'll get into in a little bit. But that's it. It's just me holding a fingertip plank for 2 minutes, and I'm, as Brooks mentioned, I'm pretty amazed because it's been the number 1 viewed video of all the videos that I've done so far. I think about 80 videos. And in the time frame, so it's about 200 or 300 views ahead of the number 2 in the actual time frame that it's been posted, and it continues to be very popular. So yeah, I think that it's something that's very easy, very practical. Anybody can do it, can try it, and can see that what I demonstrated is in my opinion fairly impressive, and just see how it goes. But yeah, it's pretty surprising to me that what the response has been.
So you have videos on your YouTube channel, mm-hmm. featuring tribute videos, among other things. Mm-hmm. Tributes to Eugene Sandow, Louis Cyr, 2 of them, I think, to Carl Gotch, mm-hmm. famous professional wrestler. You have tribute videos featuring old-time equipment, the Bull Worker, I think.
Yeah. We did one on the various ads and imagery with the Bull Worker. We got 2 on Vince Gironda. Mm-hmm. A lot of guys have a lot of photos, and Carl Gotch, being a personal favorite, also has some great photos, and we dug into the Japanese wrestling magazines, found a lot of rare stuff there.
A lot of stuff that you don't see elsewhere.
Yeah, absolutely. And
so you have all those out there, mm-hmm. but you've beat them all
so far, and there's some reasons for that. I think that people have their fans, but I think it was interesting that I was also demonstrating something that could be done by anybody or could be attempted by anybody. So there was that kind of challenge aspect to it, which was certainly not by accident. But I think that if you're want to see a great exercise and also see the results of training that exercise very intently for months at a time, that's right there.
Well, that brings me to what was going to be my next question. You said that what you do on the video is to get into the lockout position, or the top position, the plank position, if you will, mm-hmm. of push-up, except you're not on the palms of your hands, you're on your fingertips. Is that 1 finger? Is it 2 fingers? Is it finger and thumb? Is it all the fingers? How's that work?
It's just as if you were carrying a bowl of soup in your hands or in your hand, and then just flip your hand over, and then that's the position. And
Okay.
and
And
that's it.
it's, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, that's pretty much just it. That's really not much to it.
You can tell we haven't done one of these for a while because I'm speaking over John, for which I apologize. So you're balanced on fingers and thumbs of both hands. You're
Mm.
holding it, and you've worked up to 2 minutes. That sounds easy. Is it easy or hard?
Well, all I have to say is, if you think it sounds easy, go ahead and try it.
Well, how many takers have you had? Because you've been throwing this out for a while, and it seems to me like you don't have a lot of guys who are going out and trying it, and particularly not a lot of guys who weigh 265 pounds as you do.
I've had a few guys that have written in, and actually I have a few that actually posted their own videos of them doing it for an extended period of time, which is quite impressive. But other people have said, I had one guy said, "Hey, I only weigh 145 pounds and I only made it 30 seconds." So, I thought that was interesting, and some other guys, and also I think that one of the things to point out in the video is, for me, just the way I do it is that I'm holding that position as a good push-up, body straight. There's no sag, there's no anything like that. I'm perfectly straight. So, which is also, I mean, that fits into just a normal plank type of workout too. So there's a lot of stuff going on there. The fingertips are obviously the kind of the weak link, and which is on purpose, which is why I'm doing the exercise. But a lot of structures are being trained at the same time.
When you do them, are you on a mat, on a floor, wooden floor, concrete? What are you actually pressing down on?
I'd do it wherever I happen to be. In the video, I'm in my driveway in front of my garage on concrete. If you think that it's tough, or if it's something that's part of the challenge, I didn't see it as being that big a deal. More often than not, I'm doing it in my living room while my kids are there. So on the carpet, and but I've really found no real problem with doing it on a harder surface.
Have you ever tried doing it on a more yielding surface, such as the grass or sand? Or
I have not, just because I haven't been doing much traveling, but you could, if you wanted to. I think it would be just a different experience. I would make note of that if you were um, in your training log. I actually, to reveal a small detail, is that I found a difference in doing the exercise in socks versus doing it in shoes. So I sometimes do one and do the other, but I do make a note of it because it makes a difference in the exercise.
which is harder, socks or shoes?
I think socks, because you're not getting as much friction from the back, so there's more abdominal focus to maintain that position.
Interesting. Interesting. Now, how long have you been doing these, and what was your starting point, if you don't mind telling us?
I think I started somewhere around Thanksgiving of last year, 2020.
Okay.
And when I started, I was only able to do a three 10-second holds. I was very not particularly strong in that movement, even though I'm very good in a lot of other grip movements and forearm movements. This was an area that I was clearly lacking.
Interesting. So you've worked up from 3 sets of 10 seconds to 1 set of 2 minutes?
I've done it a couple different ways. Sometimes I'll do it one set for as long as I can, or a specific set time, and sometimes I'll do, I guess, what you could call sets of less, not maximal holds, but I guess you could call them intervals or circuits, something like that. I mean, I do that with a lot of different movements and a lot of different training styles. So I've got a couple different ways that I train them, and and really it's just a matter of making progress in whatever I'm doing that day.
In one of the issues of the John Wood report, you wrote about another very basic exercise, but one that you've used very effectively in an unusual way, and that was the lunge, which you often convert to a walking lunge. But the really interesting part of that article, I thought, was laying out the not the sets and reps, so to speak, because it was beyond that. And everyone who reads the article or has read the article will know what we're talking about. But you would train it in different ways at different times or in different workouts. And I assume in your training log, keep track, I did this one day, I did this another day, I did this a third day. And so you're keeping 3 or 4 different sets of progress notes, if you will. And you find if I do it this way in one workout, then the next time I train, when I do it this way, presumably I'm stronger in better conditions, so I can do more this way, and you're mixing it up. I assume that's what you're doing with the push-up holds.
Very much so. And I've also been considering putting together a report or a course or of some sort that is very similar to the way that I did the lunge, in which I would literally have a listing of every workout that I've done going back to the beginning. So you can see exactly what I've done. You can see the progression of not only the performance, but the progression of ideas and some of the different things that I've tried. So that's something that I'll probably put together at some point. I've had a lot of interest, as you might imagine, from martial artists that are saying, hey, I want to be able to train this for obvious reasons. So yeah, that's in the cards.
Well, just a note to everybody who's watching and listening. If you'd like to see that, give John a gentle push by putting a comment in that says, hey, I'd love to see a course on this. Perhaps we can talk him into doing it very quickly. So did you start out with slow and steady progress, or was there like a big jump either at the beginning or later on, or how did the progress go?
It was real gradual, and part of that is that when you're dealing with the structures of the hands, especially when for this particular movement, now you're talking about a lot of weight on things that don't get a lot of direct movement or resistance on a regular basis. So, and that's kind of been my mindset for a lot of these exercises, is that all of a sudden when you really sit down and focus on something, it's an area of development that certain body parts are just not used to. So you have to progress very slowly. You have to be very careful. Everything's deliberate. Safety is always a priority for me, because you can't make progress if you're injured. So even if it's just a little bit of improvement over time, I'm fine with that. I'm not trying to shoot the moon, because I know that it's just a matter of sticking with it if I'm making progress every time.
Interesting. So have you been doing other grip work while you've been focusing on the fingertip push-up holds, or is it just focusing on the fingertip push-up holds?
I have actually been doing them kind of in addition to doing the push-up holds, or the fingertip push-up holds, in addition to my regular grip work. And what I found, and this was not my intention from the outset, but to go a little bit in a different direction, and something we haven't talked a lot about yet, but I'm sure we will at some point. But the Bone Strength Project, which I've been involved with for several years now, it has to do with the adaptation to a heavy support. And I've got a series of exercises that do that, and then lead to bone increases in bone mass and bone mineral density, and therefore there's some type of interrelatedness with muscle tissue. Greater bone leads to a potential for greater muscle, and therefore greater strength. And it occurred to me as I was doing these fingertip push-up holds that this is kind of like the grip strength version of that, to where you're getting that direct stimulus from just gravity, and I have found since I started doing these fingertip push-ups, I have found tremendous improvements in other areas of grip training. So I think that that has to be an explanation for it.
Interesting. Interesting. Well, I'm assuming that you're going to continue to do these for a while.
Yeah.
You don't have to tell us what it is, but do you have an ultimate target down the road beyond the 2-minute hold?
I'd like to see if I can hit 5 minutes, and then I also have well, I won't talk about it right now, but you'll know I'm on my way, and you'll hear about this other thing that I'm working on at some point. But
Very cool. Very cool. So here's a question that I bet a lot of people have. Don't you get bored when you do this?
no, I don't. I mean, a lot of my training, especially my recent training, has been, for lack of a better term, very tedious. It's especially when you're talking about the bone strength project. I mean, you're literally just standing in the same place and not doing anything. But to me, seeing and I don't know if this is just my nature or what, but when you look in your logbook and you see the improvements over time, and it also leads to improvements in other areas, and you look back to where you started and where you are now, and it's just like, man, I've come a long way. To me, there's the reward there, and I don't know if it's, well, it's both physical, and I'm sure there's neurotransmitters and things like that going on, to where you're rewarded in your own physiology for a job well done. So there's some of that, but once it's the runner's high, the weightlifting or the strength training equivalent to the runner's high, where you're saying, hey, I just accomplished something. I said I'm going to do this, and then I did it, and you feel like Superman afterwards.
You made a reference to runners and the runner's high, which made me think there's an interesting contrast between people who run for exercise or for sport. And I mean, if you train for sprinting, for example, I mean, your sprint workouts alone are a very serious form of training. Extremely serious. Okay. Very intense, very hard. If you're doing long distance running, middle distance running, long distance running, you're doing long running workouts that are stressing the body's aerobic and cardiovascular systems, and that can be really difficult and demanding too. Interestingly, all you're doing is running. Quote, all you're doing is running. And yet people in that world don't seem to get bored. But in the strength world, and particularly in what I'm going to refer to as the fitness world, as opposed to the strength world, there seems to be this mantra of, oh my God, if you do the same thing 2 workouts in a row, number one, your body will, shrivel up, and your muscles will fade away, and your strength will plummet. You have to keep hitting your body with new things. You have to surprise it. You have to always do different stuff. And of course, in the social media world, you can't just show the same exercise, particularly if it's a relatively simple basic exercise. You can't show that every day on social media. You have to do, what I refer to as the squats on roller skates, the really over the top, crazy, insane looking stuff to get people's interest and, get those likes and looks. But it's all about new and different and fancy and crazy stuff and novel stuff all the time, which is a very different mindset from you sitting there workout after workout, holding a fingertip push-up position. It's a much different mindset, and I think a much different physiological response.
I think it also is a mature mindset, in that when you start out training, you're just like, it's Disney World. It's, oh my God, I can do this, I can do that, I can do bands, and I can do chains, and I can do machines, and I can do sled dragging, and I can do 3 sets of 10, and I can do German volume training, and I can do kettlebell training. I mean, there's this whole range of this buffet of stuff that you can do when you're 14, 15, 16 years old. that's fine. Try out a bunch of stuff. But as you go through time, I think the expectations change, and the expectations in yourself all of a sudden are a matter of saying, I don't have time to screw around with stuff that is just superficial. I want the results. I want to focus on the stuff that's going to get me to my my objectives here. And I think that to me, that's kind of the ideal philosophy that a lifter trainer should go through, and that there should be a less exception of or acceptance of BS, to put it bluntly.
Yeah, and that's an old school mindset.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's an old fashioned. Well, let me clarify that. The focus on doing the most effective, most important things, and really working them hard and making that what you do is an old school focus, which is not to say that the magazines from the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s were not filled with ridiculous exercises of essentially no value and potentially dangerous. I mean, you know, we have the classic example from the old York courses, from George F. Jowett, barbell leg presses, unassisted barbell leg press. You lie down on your back, you get the barbell on your bottom of your feet, you leg press it, or you do it with one leg. Yeah. Now, mind you, they recommend to do that with a boot with a heel on, so the barbell can kind of, you know, roll down, and, you know, hopefully the heel won't fall off and the barbell won't either. But I mean, that's an insane, stupid exercise. It's ridiculous, and it's of virtually no value. The risk of injury is extreme. I mean, you know, you're either going to lose your ability to have children, or you're going to drop the barbell on your rib cage, or your throat, or your head, or whatever. It's absurd. And yet it was out there as an exercise. Looks cool as heck, but is absurd.
Yeah.
You know, so they had ridiculous exercises in the old school world. But, you know, nowadays it's like everybody, at least on social media, is always doing essentially dumb stuff because it looks cool.
Mm-hmm.
And what people are not doing on social media is a basic, simple exercise that they work into the ground, you know, be it squats, bench presses, barbell curls, you know, whatever. You know, you just don't see much of that compared to the crazy stuff. So I think it's interesting that you've gotten so many views, such a positive response by doing something that is so completely antithetical to the social media mindset.
It's definitely not flashy. I am showing off a little bit, but at the same time, this is not novelty. This is not me trying to say, look at this circus act that I can, everybody look at me. And I think that, and like I say, it fits into several different goals that I have. One of the things that precluded this, one of the reasons I started training this way, is that for whatever reason, I always had a goal of being able to do a handstand fingertip hold. And, you know, being able to do that, I mean, I'm a pretty decent hand balancer for being 260 plus pounds anyway, but being able to support my entire body weight on my fingertips, and literally a larger percentage of that on my thumbs, means that I'm nowhere near as far as development, as far as the supporting ability to be able to do that. So being able to do the push-ups, or training the push-ups, was an entree to that. I knew it would take a long time. I mean, I think that one of the characteristics of modern training is that immediate gratification, and sometimes that has to do with watching other people do crazy things that you wouldn't do yourself. And I suppose perhaps that's human nature to some extent. But when you sit down and have goals that are literally years into the future, and say, okay, between where I am right now and achieving this particular objective is 300 workouts. I mean, that's radical really in its simplicity. and it's not the type of thing that you see very often.
As I said, it's an old school mentality.
Mhm.
It's an old school way of doing things. Um, so that's interesting. So will there be more videos of this type of workout in the future, or is that a highly guarded secret?
I'll probably have something. I've got some other things in a similar area that I've been working on, that really it's just me saying, hey, this is not only what I can do to kind of show that I walk the walk as far as the type of training that I talk about. And if you try it, if you go ahead and try it, you can see that it's definitely no walk in the park. But then also, I've got some other things that I mean, I am showing off a little bit, I suppose, but at the same time, I think that when you got somebody that is an example, as a prime example of the principles and the mindset and the philosophy that they ascribe and put out into the world, I think that's important. So it's also me just saying, hey, this is what I can do based on the things that I'm, the courses, the books, the attitude, the mindset, all the other stuff that I have for sale or offer in other ways. I think that anybody should be the greatest example of that, uh, in the marketplace, and we know today and in the past that's not always the case. But for me, it's just me saying, hey, here's what I can do.
And the other message, and I'm sure we'll cover this in more detail in future podcasts, but one thing that we've been pounding on, both of us since really we began writing about strength and power and muscle building and all of that. There's always been an emphasis on finding a way to train no matter what the odds, no matter what adversity you face. You find a way to train. You find a way to train effectively.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't have a barbell, you use a sandbag. If you don't have a sandbag, you use a rock. If you don't have a rock, you do push-ups. If you don't have a pull-up bar, you go out and find a local tree, a nearby tree. You do pull-ups on a tree branch. Whatever, you train. And you make that the focus. And if you're really determined to train, you find a way to do it. Now, of course, last year, 2020, with COVID and the lockdowns, the gyms were closed. And there was a real divide between the people who continued to train and the ones who gave up. Said, I can't do it.
Mm-hmm.
Gym's closed, I can't train. Well, that's ridiculous. Of course you can train. And you and I have been really beating the drum about that for the last more than a year.
Mm-hmm.
Really saying you can train anywhere, you can train with anything, just get out and do it. And one thing that both of us have done has been to really experiment a lot with very simple things that anyone can do anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
I've been doing that with isometric training for almost a year now, a lot of old school isometrics. I'll write about that in the Dinosaur Files newsletter. And you've been doing it in a lot of things. And one thing that epitomizes that is the idea of doing a fingertip push-up hold and training it essentially as an extreme isometric, a long duration, long hold isometric, and train it for time, which is amazingly something that anybody can do. And as you noted earlier, you can do it anywhere, on any surface. It's one of those no excuses. If you don't have time to do anything else, you've got 3 minutes to train your fingertip push-ups. If you can do a nonstop hold for 3 minutes, that's great. Send us a video. If you do something less, or if you do shorter multiple holds, or whatever you do, you'll get a great workout. You could probably get a great workout in a minute.
Oh yeah. There's different ways of training that particular muscle group. There's different hand positions. I'm sure I haven't done a lot of experimentation with that, but I have in the past. But to me, this was one of the real values of this, and also one of the reasons that it came about was because a year ago, with COVID and all that, all of a sudden, my wife is home, she's working from home, my kids are not, they can't go to school, so I've got to be, I don't have the luxury of going into my workout for an hour and a half, or going into my weight room for an hour and a half and doing something. I have to be present, I have to be watching the kids. So this also kind of came about from a couple different factors, but one of which is being that I could do this in my living room with my kids watching TV or playing with blocks or doing whatever they're doing, but I could do this at the same time right there without needing any equipment, without needing any setup, and get it done and get a great workout, and have something that I could work on, but also fulfill the role of being, having to watch them, having to keep an eye on them too at the same time. So it was just it's one of those things that, hey, if it's important, you'll figure out a way to do it.
Mhm.
And this was also one of those kind of happenstance moments where all of a sudden I uncovered something that's been really valuable for me. I'm excited, and I also, the other thing, and we touched on it a little bit earlier, is that when you see the progress from workout to workout, the other interesting thing that I want to point out about this exercise and isometrics in general is that I have yet to have a workout where I did not improve
Interesting.
in both in the fingertip push-ups and just the isometric techniques that I've been experimenting with. So when people talk about, oh, isometrics are worthless and blah blah blah, I think that there's stuff going on there that physiologically that people haven't really taken the time to understand and train and look into in a meaningful way. So and to me, that's also one of the most important things about any kind of workout, is that you have a workout where you improve, where you just kick ass, you're not going to miss the next one. You're going to say, hey, how much stronger am I now than I was back then? And that's one of the things that's going to keep you going, is the success is going to beget more success.
I want to talk about this in more detail. We could do a whole podcast on this, but
Mm.
a lot of people, their concern about doing isometrics is they think they can't measure progress.
Mm.
Their question is, well, how do I measure progress? How do I know that I'm getting stronger? How do I know that it's working? And because it's crazy, but because of the concern, how will I know if I'm getting stronger? How will I know if it is working? Because of that concern, they don't do it.
Mm.
They don't try. But if you don't worry about that, if you just say, I'm going to try it and see what happens, what you learn is that, particularly if you're an experienced trainee and you know what hard work feels like, and you know what getting stronger is like, because you've done it before. Okay. If you have that history, that background, and you try, an extreme isometric, which is what you're doing with the fingertip push-up hold, or bone strength training or isometrics or anything, unusual where you can't really measure your progress the way you would normally do it by adding reps or adding weight. Okay. What you find is that you do get stronger, and very quickly, like literally from one workout to another, and you know it, you can feel it, and that encourages you to do the next workout, which then generates additional progress, and you go from one workout to another. You absolutely are making progress. You're not measuring it per se, but you don't need to, because you know that it's working and you're confident that it's working, as opposed to the guy who says, well, I'll never know if it works or not, so I'm just not going to do it. I'm not going to try. I'm not going to see what it's like. And that's a shame. There should be more people who say, I'm going to try it and see what it feels like and see what happens, and test it, which is what you're doing with the fingertip push-up hold.
And I'm very particular, and which I've talked about before, in that I like measurement. I like to keep track of various things, but sometimes it's easier in different ways than, with certain lifts, with certain types of training than others. True, you don't necessarily know how much force you're exerting in specific kinds of isometrics, but at the same time, there's always some means of creating a baseline, of creating a measurement of some sort. And I don't worry about it. And then I just keep track of it from there. So even if you don't know, I mean, a barbell, you know what a barbell weighs, but at the same time, there's other factors with training, just regular conventional training, that are not always represented in sets and reps. One of the things that I did years ago is that I timed the amount of the amount of seconds, or however long it took to do certain exercises. I was just curious as to the amount of time that the work was actually taking place. And as I started accumulating the data, one of the interesting things that I noticed is that the time under tension at times would increase even when the amount of repetitions would decrease. And so even if you got 4 reps last time and 3 reps this time, there might have been more actual work, physiological work, from a muscular standpoint, because of the tempo or some other factor. It wasn't always reflected in sets and reps. So if you think, you got 1 less rep this time and you just didn't get any stronger, well, you did. It's just not represented in the way you were measuring your progress. So I think the body, as long as you're working hard, and you know what that means, different people have different ways of working that out in their own head. But really, if you think about it from a kinesiological standpoint, that's all that's necessary to trigger the growth response. Just work of a sufficient magnitude above and beyond, what is considered the baseline. Then you'll grow, you'll get results. So to worry about it, to obsess over it, to whine about it, as we see on occasion, is not the way.
I agree 110%. Yeah, and really, it comes back to the bottom line, which is the message of all of these podcasts: is if you want to do it, you will find a way to do it, and you'll find a way to do it effectively. And the way to get results from your training is to study, think, plan, and then take action.
Mm-hmm.
And you need all of them. And when you take action, you got to follow the Davy Crockett principle. Be sure you're right, then go ahead.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, make up your mind to do something and do it, and don't sit there. You're in the middle of a set of squats thinking, I've got 5 more to do to get 20, but maybe what I should do is do 3 sets of 10, or it's like, that's not going to get you very far. Make a plan, take action, and learn from the action that you take. The things you do now, the things you do today, will inform what you do in the future.
Sure.
You learn by doing.
And I think it's also important is that, Brooks, you get questions all the time. I get questions all the time. And I would say that 95% of the time, the answer to those questions, to these training questions, is, I don't know. You try it out and do it, and that'll let you know what you need to know. Is it good for you? Is it not good for you? I have no idea. I have my preferences, things that I like to do, things that I've come up with or concluded based on my own experience. But if there's something that you like that I am not into, or your preference, your own preferences, actually training a certain way will give you the answer.
Mm-hmm. When I get advice, should I do A or should I do B? Should I do this or should I do that? Unless it's something really dangerous or not a good idea, and you do get some of those, and you make a gentle suggestion that it might be better not to do a particular thing that could result in an injury, for example. other than that, my advice now pretty much is try it and see,
Mhm.
because it may work for me or not, but it may work fine for someone else or not. And the only way that they will find out is to try it and see.
And I
So
think it's important at times to, and it's going to sound weird, but to have a bad workout is to make a mistake, because you're then going to understand what led to that result, the result that you don't want, so that you don't repeat it in the future. So, I mean, I can't say that I've had a whole lot of bad workouts in my life, but the ones that I've had, I appreciated because I learned some things that I knew what not to do. And so there were mistakes that I never had to repeat again. And I'm amazed that there's people out there that the old saying of definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. Well, man, we see that every day on the internet, and I don't know. I don't know what to say about it other than pointing it out, but it's out there, and if that's something that people need a little nudge in the right direction, that hey, if you have a bad workout, then that's a good thing. There is some value that comes with that.
I sometimes get emails from people who have had one bad workout, literally, and they want to change their whole program.
Yep.
And it's like, oh, whoa, time out. Just give it another try.
Or that one bad workout means they didn't set a PR by 20 pounds.
Yeah, yeah. Or the one bad workout is I'm on a program, meaning, I've got it all set out in my mind. Here's what I'm going to do. I add, let's say, 1 rep every workout. And, I was doing fine for 5 workouts, but then on my 6th workout, I couldn't get the other rep. Oh my God, what do I do? Or in today's world, OMG, what do I do? And it's like, you go back in your next workout and you get the extra rep. Yeah. There was a time I remember I was doing a seated press on a really strong adjustable incline bench where I could adjust it to like 80 degrees. So, not 90 degrees being straight up, but this was just, a little bit of lean back. And I set it up in the power rack, and I set the pins so that I could lay the barbell. So it was, right here on my chest, right at the start of a press or an incline press, whatever you want to call it. Okay. I would call them seated high incline press or 80-degree incline press, whatever. So I was doing that exercise, and I think I started with like 2.25 or something, which is a heavy weight because you're starting from the bottom position, dead stop, perfectly strict movement, obviously no hip thrust or leg drive or anything like that. And I worked up to 245, and I tried 250 in one workout, and I missed it. I only got it, like right there, and stuck, couldn't budge it. Okay. The next week, I tried it again. I was using a programmer. I was training each primary lift once a week. Okay, so I come back a week later, work up to the 250, drive it, and like maybe half an inch higher, and that was it. Long story short, it took, I believe, 7 workouts before I finally was able to push that 250-pound barbell all the way to a arm straight lockout. And so 7 workouts is almost 2 months. But it was a really effective training period. I eventually worked up to 320 pounds. So, I made really good progress on that exercise. If I had stopped when I missed the 250 and said, well, that's it, I've maxed out, I can't go any further. Number one, I never would have done the 250. And number two, I would have missed all the gains that came from gradually getting the point where I could make the 250, and then from there working up to the 320. So solid concrete real world example from 30 years ago.
And sometimes you just have a bad day.
Yeah.
You know, maybe you didn't get a lot of sleep last night, or you ate something that doesn't agree with you, or you're just not on the right wavelength on a particular exercise on a particular day. It's not a big deal.
Yeah. Cool. Well, why don't we wrap it up? Because I think we've had a good day on this podcast so far. And let me just ask you, from this episode, from the topics we've covered, close us out with one final thought for the troops.
Well, we definitely covered a lot of ground. I think that if you look at the one overriding principle that's going to help you get results, it's stick with it. That's it. I mean, easy to say, but not always easy to do, but that's what makes it worth it.
Those are 3 very good words that everyone ought to sear into their brain cells. So cool. Good podcast. Let's sign off and be back soon with another one.
All right.
So long, everyone.